Hello, hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Everyday Talks with me, Paula. And I have a very special guest with me today. This is my husband, Martin. Say hello, Martin.
Hello.
Now, yes, I know what you're thinking. Where are all the women at? Well, I know this is about a woman's talk show, and we're going to talk about women's issues, but considering the content, I thought it would be really interesting and something slightly different to have a man's perspective on this. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is the sexualization of breasts, women's breasts. Where did that come from? How did that become part of Western civilization? And we have African women walking around with their breasts showing, and they don't think anything about it because they are using their breasts for what they are supposed to be used for, which is breastfeeding our children. That's exactly what they're used for. And I breastfed my daughter, and I know lots and lots of other women who have used their breasts to feed their babies. They have used their body, their breasts, to do exactly what they were meant to be doing. So, how is it and how did it come about that we have created this culture of sexualizing breasts, of making breasts have to be covered up because they mustn't be seen? Martin will probably remember this. One of the very first times that I was breastfeeding our daughter in a park, it was a scorching hot day, and an old man was walking past the park. I was on a bench, I was covered up, I was covering our daughter's head with a tissue because it was very, very hot. He tutted. Do you remember that, Martin? And it was, hang on a minute, I'm giving my baby her lunch. Do I go past you when you're eating in a cafe, dribbling and drooling with your dentures out, when you're having your lunch and tut at you? No. So let's really sort of look at that. So thank you for being with me today, Martin.
No, it's a great pleasure.
Before we came on, we were having we were having the giggles because this is very odd for us, having this conversation. But we have talked about this before, haven't we? About the sexualization of breasts, and so let's look at that. So at the moment in the UK, we are dealing with a very, very hot heat wave. Yeah, it's hot. It's summer, you know. You expect to see topless men wandering the streets, wandering the parks, doing what they do, just going about their business, but they're topless. And it's perfectly normal. It's perfectly accepted. So why can't women do that? Why is it one rule for men who have nipples? Some men even have bigger boobs than I do. But apparently it's okay for them. So why is it one rule for one and one rule for another? What do you think, Mom?
Actually, it's a toughie. I haven't. I could say I have no idea why that is. I can, as ever, I can only speak from the male perspective.
Yeah.
Um, I believe that men will go topless in all kinds of inappropriate places because they like to be looked at. There's no other point in doing it, particularly because they're going to be sweaty and horrible anyway. But I'm pretty sure men think you ladies take great pleasure in looking at your topless men walking around a shop or something
Mm,
because I know you like it that much. It's horrible. Um,
not particularly.
I do believe that's what it is. I do believe they like to be looked at.
Hmm.
And in their heads, they're worth looking at. I only,
All of them?
yeah, all of them you see
All of
topless,
them.
they all think they look great. Until you get to a certain age where you think, "Well, no one's going to even bother wanting to look at this, so they don't worry about it."
I think, do you think that it started from a very, very early age, isn't it? I mean, obviously, boys, they can run around topless, in shorts. And many a time, you and I have walked over Chester Bridge and we've watched the children jumping into the river, and that's perfectly fine and it's find it's not particularly safe, but they do it anyway. And we've seen how many boys jumping into rivers and running around, with their tops off from a very, very early age. And then that seems to be accepted into adulthood. And then, God forbid, we even see it in the very elderly men walking around, you know, in their gardens and topless or in the street or whatever. And it's acceptable. It's not questioned. It may not be pleasant to look at for some of us, which, the hot, sweaty men who don't particularly look after themselves, that's up to them, how they look after their bodies. But should we have to look at them in our everyday life? Should that be sort of put into our eyesight when we're going shopping or in the cities? I don't know how many times, over the years, I've sat down on a bench and some topless, big, hairy, fat, sweaty bloke has sat next to me, and it's like, ugh, I don't need to see that. I don't want to smell that. I don't want to look at that. And yet you can do it. And there's an element of jealousy about it. I have to admit, there is an an element of jealousy because right now in this heat, I walk around topless up in our house, in our garden, but it's instinctive. As soon as I think I'm going to go out into public or someone might see me, I have to put a top on. Why is that? Why is it? If I walked out topless down the street, what kind of reaction do you think I'd get one before I was arrested?
There'll be a lot more fellas doing the gardening, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you have to drill right down to the male psyche.
Can you do that for me? We got time.
Well, this is how I see it. Men, they're born and they feed off their mum's breasts. That's just a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That stops, and then it feels like you go sort of through puberty, and you get your hormones kicking in, and a male argument is always that it's hardwired into the male. Nature has decreed that the man will be born, he will live his life trying to reproduce. That is your real base point.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
And so when we get to a point where we've pushed out the whole mum's boobs thing, men see breasts just sexually. That's it. It's a complete sexual thing, almost like a beacon, if you will. Men will walk down the street, and they probably half the time don't even know they're doing it, but they will look at a woman's breasts. They do it. It's just done, and I'm owning it. I probably do it all the time. You just don't know what's going on. Sometimes, other times, it's a decision you make, and I'm probably going to be filling the suitcase soon. It's just that feels like that's what it is. It's a male psyche thing, or it's a get out of jail free card. Most men do it. Probably all men do it. And I'm only speaking for men. I'm not speaking for sort of gay women or anything, because most men will just do it. Most men would be mortified if they were pulled up on it. If they think they're getting away with it every time, I don't think a woman even notices the man's looking.
But we do.
We know that really deep down.
We do, because our face is here and our boobs, are down here. Well, mine are here. Some women's are down there, and we do. We notice. When I'm walking down a street and men sort of are looking at me, and then they go, what? I mean, a few times I have sort of called them up on it and said, no, do you want a better look? What? I'm trying to embarrass them, because to me, it's such a degradation where you're looking at me, judging me on breasts that are not for you. They were for my child. Yes, I understand that they are part, they are one of the erogenous zones, that they are for pleasure, in a sexual context. But trying to get down to the basics of where did that programming come from? So in our childhood, porn was not easy to come by. Growing up in the 70s and 60s and 70s, porn was just something that dirty old men looked at, on backstreet videos that, they got from the back of a van or something, wasn't it? It wasn't, or it was the top shelf magazine, that nobody looked at, and dirty old men would sneak in at night and sort of go and buy one, and that was it. And if, as we grew up into our early teens, I can remember coming across my first porn mag stuffed in a hedge. I think I was probably 11, I think, maybe 12. And the boys that I was with, because I played with lads, I was a bit of a, I hate the word tomboy, but I was. And they were all, "Hey, look, it's a, I won't, it's a certain kind of mag." And I can remember watching these boys getting so excited about seeing a pair of boobs in on a page. That they were so, "Hey, look at this, hey, look at that, oh, look at the tits on that." It's like, wow, really? They're just what, because I was just starting to develop then. I didn't really consider them sexual. I didn't consider them, they were just part of me. So is that where it starts, where young lads, I mean, obviously nowadays porn is just one click away. It's just too easily available for kids to look at. And the other thing that we grew up in the 60s and 70s was page three in the Sun newspaper.
Yeah.
It was like, "Hey, come on, we're going to give you a little thrill every day. Here's your page three. Oh, look at these pair of boobs." What was that about?
They were probably being very clever because you want to sell a newspaper, a tacky newspaper. It's mainly the newspapers were mainly in those days aimed at blokes. Page three meant you only had to turn one page to get to the naked breasts. Um, and apparently the ink would come off all over your hands. I don't know. I was told. My father used to
Yeah.
get the sun every day. But yeah, these people knew how to sell to men. So your question is, why is that a selling point?
Why is there a selling point?
Or was it a selling point? Because now, obviously, it's not done anymore, to the best of my knowledge.
Probably because porn is so readily available that sort of titillating with one tiny page with, well, it wasn't a tiny page, wasn't it?
No,
Was it a
no,
full page
I don't remember.
of a, yeah, sure, with a woman, I think she was usually wearing a pair of knickers, was she? Or something? Yeah, yeah. I know you're trying to
I
desperately
was reading
pretend you
the
haven't.
bloody Bible.
Um, the idea of just seeing a woman posing with a pair of
Boobs.
boobs hanging out is probably not as titillating now because it is, one click and look, you can see as many boobs as you want and a lot more. Do you think that's what's happened?
I would imagine so. I would imagine so. It was a very cheap thrill at the time, I think. And,
Because it wasn't readily available, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was one of those unmentionable secrets that everyone seemed to know about. That if you wanted to try and find a porn mag, go look in the hedges on lay-bys, because that's where the lorry drivers would leave all the porn mags, for the next guy to come and have a little thrill with it. That's what was happening in the 60s and 70s, as I didn't even know if it was into the 80s.
The Paul mag in the lay-by
Mm.
is actually still happening to this day.
Really?
Yeah, because I used to be a delivery driver,
Yeah, yeah.
and the overnight lorries would use the lay-bys. Usually, yeah, the foreign drivers, but just blokes. And if I ever used the lay-by, then I would probably see Ireland stuffed in the behind the bin and stuff. So yeah, that
Goodness.
still goes on.
Okay. So why do men like boobs? Is it the look? Is it the feel? Is it the fact that it's attached to a woman? Is it does a man put so much emphasis on breasts? So I've heard men say, I prefer large-breasted women. Well, why? What is it about a large-breasted woman that you're not getting with a woman with, say, I don't know, B cup or an A cup, whatever? Is it her personality? Is it her breast size that comes first?
Uh, That I could not tell you. No idea, because I don't have a preference.
I know I'm your wife, and I know we've been married 33 years, and you've seen my breasts go, you know, from a certain size going up to a bigger size when I was breastfeeding, our daughter, and where I am now I'm 55 and in my menopause, and I've said to you jokingly, I would love to have a breast reduction. Purely not because I don't like my breasts. It's because they're uncomfortable, especially in heat. They're really uncomfortable. It's very hot and it's heavy and it's a lot to be carrying around in this heat. So again, I'm going back to my what is it that men will say things like, "Oh, I prefer big-breasted women," or "I prefer smaller women." Well, why don't you just like women for who they are? Why do you sort of associate woman with the size of her breast?
I haven't got an answer for that one. I've
No,
no idea why. What differentiates whether you could ever do a poll and find out, do men naturally levitate away from the size of their mother's breasts?
that would be an interesting poll, wouldn't it?
Hmm.
Is it because um just say for argument's sake they've grown up with a woman with small breasts and they quite fancy having a go with bigger breasts? I don't know. We don't know. So, that's a question that I would love to hear from you, if you fancy answering that, men, why? Why do you sort of look at a woman and say, well, she might be nice, but because I've even heard that, where I've heard men when I was in my younger days. I was very fit. I was a dancer, and I was with certain people, and they would see women with large breasts and go, and they would recoil. So I've been watching this change over the decades about how is it society's changing it? Society deciding what is acceptable breast size for that particular decade.
Strangely enough, I was thinking something along those lines only today while I was out doing God's work. Where did the shapely ankle thing come from?
Mm,
And why did that go away? And what made ankles a thing? And
mm,
when in those days where it is a shapely ankle,
mm.
did breasts not figure into the man's thing in those times? You can tell me what times they are. I can only remember 2 days ago.
Well, shapely ankles would have been because women they were expected to wear extremely long dresses and skirts because to show anything was considered immoral in the Edwardian times and Victorian times. And it was only sort of in the early 1900s that the skirt started to rise. And the other thing that men would uh, comment on was the size of her waist. That's why women wore corsets to try and make their waists as small as possible, try and get the best husband that they could, the best, because that's all women were considered good for. Um, having a a tiny waist, apparently.
Hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, you're quite right. I don't. Over the years, I've researched for books and things like that, and I've never really come across, when I was writing the Victorian diaries and things about. I never came across anything to do with breasts. It was always about legs, feet, waist, and shapely face. I don't recall ever coming across any kind of research to do with breast size or anything like that.
I mean, would you think then they were unmentionables,
They probably were unmentionables.
which makes them a thing?
Well, yes, yes, I suppose when you look at it like that, it's people want what they can't have. This kind of the mysterious. So that was something that I was going to talk about was that, we see women who wear um low cut tops and you can see cleavage and what have you, and that's absolutely fine. That's a beautiful thing. She's whatever she's wearing. But do men see that as uh temptation? It's possibly the wrong word. That, oh, it's like half opening a mysterious present, you know, that they want to see the rest of it because it's giving them a glimpse of something that is beautiful. It's not yours, huh? you know. I do wonder sometimes if men were, and this has been actually proven to be true, if men were given free rein to do whatever they wanted without consequence to a woman's body, one of the first things they did was touch her breasts and undress her so that they could see all of her. Now, that's actually been true a couple of times in experiments, social experiments, where men have been told that there's no consequence to what you do with a woman. I'm trying to remember the woman's name. I can't. Um, the main one that stands out for me, she was French. She was in the 1970s, and she stood for 6 hours and she laid loads of stuff on the table. One of them was a gun, and a man actually put a gun to her head and made her hold it and kept playing with the trigger. But one of the first things they did, they stripped her and then they played with her breasts and touched her inappropriately and did some awful things because they were told there was no consequence. The very first time that she was allowed to move after 6 hours, they legged it. They all ran. Now, see, to me, that tells me a lot that if you tell a society there's no consequence, what will men do if they're allowed to get away with it? So to do with breasts, going back to breasts, something that started to come in, I first saw it in the 80s. Um, a friend of mine, we were having like in the 80s, I would have been about nine, 8, 9. And up to that point in the summer, you'd have your paddling pools and you'd be running in and out of those sprays that, the Digigarden
Yeah,
did that kind of thing.
sprinkler.
The sprinklers, you'd be running in and out of them. And you'd just have your knickers on. There was there was no there was no question about having, because you were a girl. There was nothing there. You just looked like a boy. Um, and that was that. And then the very first time that it was kind of questioned was a friend of mine. She turned up at one of these. We were going to have a bit of a water fight, and she turned up with a bikini on, and she was 2 years younger than me, so she'd have been about 6 or 7. Why are you putting a bikini on a young child, a girl? You're basically saying that there's something she has to be ashamed of. She has to cover up. Because why? Because men, yes, there's always been predatory men. There's always been predatory men who will look at girls. But when you start giving a 5, 6, 7-year-old girl a bikini, even younger than that now, I see younger girls, 3, 4 years old, being put in a bikini. They've got nothing there. There's no breasts there. They haven't even begun to develop. And yet we are telling the girls on a subliminal message, cover up, you're dirty, do not show your womanhood. Why are we doing that?
I don't know.
I mean, we didn't do that with our daughter at all.
Well, no, it was a never done thing. So that's not, yeah, that is a parental problem or society's problem, which has caused parents to think basically blokes are going to be looking at my child.
But blokes are going to look at that child anyway, if they're that way inclined. But for me, if you put a bikini on a girl, it kind of gives a more titillating sexualization of that girl to the predator.
Yeah,
You know, it's like these awful American child what do they call the pageant things, yeah, where they doll up these 4, 5, 6-year-old girls, make them look as adult as possible, and then they parade them up and down these, and it's the mothers I'm watching. You know, whenever I've seen clips of them, I'm watching the mums going, hey, look at my daughter. Oh, you anyway, that's another story. But then you've sexualized a child. You've made them like candy to these predators. Why can't we allow these girls to be girls instead of making them into young women? That's because that to me, when you put a bikini on a child or you're putting makeup on a child, you are creating a mini woman. And I think there's something in that that is twisted. I think it creates something that would attract a predator more. It would give them more incentive.
I imagine you're probably right. You're probably right. I don't know.
We can't know, can we? Because we're not predators. We're not sick men with sick fantasies, are we, about little girls?
it's 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 all very tricky because it feels like society evolves, always will do,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not always for the best.
No.
You know, things change, mistakes are made, some of them are never rectified. Knock-on effects carry on, and you end up with situations like that
Mm.
where innocence is the rug is pulled very quickly, and suddenly you say you're dressing children up as adults. You're more or less pointing out to the world by putting them in bikinis and things that there is something there to be seen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Along the way, it messes everything up. It makes life. Because it makes life difficult. It makes everything harder for everyone. Yeah, and grown-ups then have to double think stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the DJ John Peel before he died in an interview when all the hoo-ha was going on with all the DJs and stuff. Which, you know, it's a bit of a tangent, but it actually bleeds into it. He's one of the things that totally annoyed him the most about, other than the obvious, was he said one of the great pleasures in his life was for he and his wife to go to a pub garden on a Sunday afternoon for a pint in the sun and watch the children play.
Mm.
That's what he said. They love that. They know because they were grandparenty types. The pleasure of watching people's children play. And he goes, that was taken away from him because of all that, because he was no longer allowed to sit there and watch children anymore.
Mm.
That was for the other connotation, but it is much the same now that if you sexualize children, you'll get a certain bunch of men for whom it is incentive,
Mm.
and a lot of other men who now can't, even saying it sounds weird, but
No, I know what
can't
you mean.
take pleasure out
Yeah,
of enjoying children for being children.
yeah,
You
yeah,
see what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Because that side of things has now changed and probably gone for good now.
Yes, yes. I mean, we can look back on the 60s and 70s and think it was so innocent. Everything was so you knew who the predators were because they would be wearing what the big overcoat and they'd be the flashes in the park. And the reality was there was always predators behind the scenes that we would never have heard of. It's only that we're hearing of them now through the internet, through social media, through so-called news, through and all this kind of thing. It's kind of being pushed all the time, isn't it?
Yes.
But I don't think it's increased. I think the only thing that has increased is the fact that we know about them. But they've always been there.
Yeah, well, yeah.
They've always been there. And they've always targeted children or boys, girls or boys. So, what do you think would happen? Let's just go back to this question. What do you think would happen if it was a scorching hot day and I decided to walk through our local town topless?
It's been mayhem, dear. Mayhem.
Mayhem. Okay. So how do you think the fellas would react?
The fellows would be quite shocked.
Doing it double takes?
Definitely double takes. Word would get around.
Do you think there'd be catcalls and all that?
uh,
Because you don't see much of that anymore because the men aren't allowed to do that. Well, they've never been allowed to do that, but they did it.
no, there wouldn't be. I don't
No?
think that kind of thing has quietened
It
down.
has quietened down.
That everyone would notice. You would get problems from women as well.
I think I would. Yes, I would definitely get problems from women. How long do you think it would take before the police would call?
It's how long does it take to get from the local police station? 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Mm,
It would happen.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it'd stop the traffic.
I'd stop the traffic. You see, that's something that I have sort of always had in the back of my head. This where women just go en masse and just for one day just go wherever they want, completely topless when it's nice and hot, just like men do, and just to watch the reaction of the world, of society. Because the point that I would be making is, well, if man can do it, a woman should be able to do it. If a man, if women want equality, then we have to normalize breasts. We have to normalize what a man can do, a woman can do. And if a man can walk around topless in the hot sun, why can't a woman? And a woman can, but there's consequences. There would be consequences, no doubt, for her safety. There'd be consequences for whether or not men then see it as an open invitation. What do you think?
It feels like
Mm,
somewhere along the line, women's boobs are on the same level as men's willies. Now think about it. You
hmm
walked out, went down the street topless,
hmm
mayhem, police.
hmm
If I walk down the street bottomless,
hmm
mayhem, police.
hmm
Make of that what you will, because I don't know where that leads your old Fanny there, do you? I struggle for a polite way of saying it. There you go. Where that leaves you there. But that's it. But it's exactly the same in that your boobs, my willy, naked in the street, same result.
Yeah.
And nobody thinks of anything else because that's how they're treated. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Okay. So when you put it like that, yeah, I kind of get what you're saying, but my breasts are not for you. They're not, they're not, they were for our daughter. They have a specific function.
Right?
I know what you're saying. So does your penis and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, okay, so that as you're speaking there, I'm recalling a clip that I was shown this morning of a black man on, I think it was would have been Bournemouth. He was on a beach and he was openly touching himself. He had his penis out and he was openly masturbating. And all the people on the beach, well, they told him that wasn't happening, and the men beat him up. Um, and as far as I'm concerned, that's that's the right thing to do. There was children running around, and he shouldn't have been doing that because that is a sexual act. That is an inappropriate sexual act. If I'm just walking around doing my shopping with my boobs out because it's hot, and a and if you were walking next to me with your top off and we're just doing our shopping, how is that the equivalent of your penis in public?
It's not an equivalent. What I'm saying, all I'm saying is that's how it's treated.
Yeah, that's how it's treated.
It's treated. It's treated that your breasts are sexual, and my willy is thus
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
rude, if you will.
Rude. Yeah. That's the word, isn't it? You're considered rude if you show what society tells you shouldn't be showing. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're three-dimensional, so to speak,
Sure.
whereas your vagina isn't.
Yeah.
So it's like they're visible.
Yes. Yeah.
So that they have become the sort of main sexual things to look at, is it?
Focus. Yeah, yeah. Men's focus. Yeah. Okay. Well, we are coming to the end of this. This was a really interesting chat. We can, we can just talk about this for ages, can't we? And go in all kinds of directions. But I wanted to finish on words that people use for breasts because we've heard some weird ones over the years. So let's just, back and forth. So breasts,
Boobs,
tits,
knockers,
jugs,
nuts. There's no famous of that.
bazungas.
Oh,
Put you on the spot.
let me laugh now. You come up with some more, and I'll make
I
some.
can't think of it.
They were all the words that have ever been used for breasts. There's never been another one used at all, ever.
Right.
Probably. I'm still for time here. I'm going through my childhood dirty book.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we'll leave it there. And we've come up with, there's lots of different words and some of them are what they are. Some of them I find a bit derogatory. Um, but I find it amazing that society has come up with all these different words for breasts that are basically their function is to feed children. So I'd like to thank you, Martin, for joining me and giving me your very, very brilliant, perspective on the sexualization of breasts and how society and how men and giving me your perspective as a man
As a man,
and as my husband. You've done very
well,
well.
thank you very much.
And maybe we'll see Martin again. Let's just see what happens. So join me next month for another session of Everyday Talks with Paula. And we may even take this a little bit further and really start looking at how porn has started to affect women's rights. All right. Thank you for joining us.
Very well.
Take care.